For 10 years I thought I was living the dream. My marriage to Ryan felt like a fairy tale, a storybook romance that everyone envied. He was the kind of man who seemed too good to be true, charming, attentive, and endlessly supportive of my dreams. Together we built a life filled with laughter, shared adventures, and plans for a future that felt as bright as the sun. Our home was our sanctuary, a cozy suburban house with a garden where I loved to spend my weekends planting flowers while Ryan tinkered with his latest DIY project. We hosted dinner parties for friends, traveled to new places whenever we could, and shared quiet nights on the couch with a glass of wine and a good movie. It was the kind of life I had always dreamed of, and I felt so lucky to have found it with him. As our 10th wedding anniversary approached, I wanted everything to be perfect. Ryan had been working longer hours lately, but I didn't mind. I knew he was doing it for us. Or at least that's what I told myself. To celebrate the milestone, I planned a romantic dinner at our favorite restaurant, followed by a surprise getaway to the beach where we had honeymooned. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when I told him. The morning of our anniversary, Ryan surprised me with a beautiful bouquet of roses and a handwritten card. To my beautiful wife, it read, "Thank you for 10 incredible years. Here's to many more." His words warmed my heart, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for the life we had built together. That afternoon, as I prepared for the evening, I found myself reminiscing about our journey. I thought back to the day we met, a chance encounter at a cafe where we both reached for the same book on a shelf. It was one of those moments that felt like fate, as though the universe had conspired to bring us together. From that day on, we were inseparable. Ryan had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the world, and I loved him deeply for it. By the time I arrived at the restaurant, Ryan was already waiting at our table. He looked as handsome as ever, his short black hair neatly combed and his blue eyes lighting up when he saw me. "You look stunning," he said, rising to kiss my cheek. The evening was perfect, or so it seemed. We laughed, reminisced about our favorite memories, and talked about the future. Over dessert, I presented him with the tickets to our getaway. His smile faltered for just a moment, but it was enough to give me pause. "This is amazing," he said quickly, recovering his composure. "You always know how to make me feel special." Still, that fleeting hesitation lingered in the back of my mind. Something about it felt As we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something Ryan wasn't telling me. But I dismissed the thought, convincing myself that I was imagining things. After all, our life was perfect. Why would he have anything to hide? That night, as we lay in bed, Ryan pulled me close and whispered, "I'm so lucky to have you, Emma. Thank you for being my everything." His words were sweet, but there was a heaviness in his voice that made my chest tighten. Looking back, I realize now that this was the first crack in the facade of our perfect life. At the time, I didn't know that the man I loved, the man I had built my life around, was hiding a secret that would shatter everything I thought I knew. The morning after our anniversary dinner, I woke up feeling a lingering sense of unease. Ryan had left early for work, as he often did, leaving a sweet note on the kitchen counter. "Have a great day, love. Last night was amazing." His words should have reassured me, but the feeling of something being amiss stayed with me. I tried to shake it off, focusing on my own work and errands for the day. Yet, as I tidied up the house, I stumbled across something unexpected. A crumpled receipt tucked into the pocket of Ryan's blazer, which he had draped over the back of a chair. At first, I didn't think much of it. Ryan often brought home receipts from work lunches or gas stations. But when I smoothed out the paper, my heart sank. It wasn't from a work-related expense or a casual purchase. The receipt was from an upscale jewelry store in the city, dated just 2 days before our anniversary. My mind raced. Ryan hadn't mentioned buying jewelry, and there had been no new gift or surprise during our dinner. The thought that he might have purchased something for me but forgotten to give it crossed my mind, but it didn't sit right. Ryan was meticulous about these things. If he had planned a gift, he would have given it to me already. I tried to dismiss the gnawing doubt, convincing myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe he'd bought something for a family member or a colleague. But as the day wore on, the questions in my mind grew louder. That evening, when Ryan returned home, I couldn't bring myself to ask him about the receipt. He greeted me with his usual warmth, kissing me on the cheek and asking about my day. I watched him closely, searching for signs of deceit, but his demeanor was as calm and affectionate as ever. "Did you have a good day?" he asked, setting his briefcase down by the door. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Pretty uneventful." We ate dinner together, the conversation light and casual. But I couldn't help noticing the way he glanced at his phone more frequently than usual, his expression briefly clouding each time a notification appeared. Later that night, as Ryan showered, I gave in to the growing unease and checked his phone. I had never done this before. I had always trusted him implicitly. But something about that receipt, and the way he had been acting, pushed me to cross a line I never thought I would. His phone was password protected as I expected, but I knew the code. It was our wedding date, an irony that wasn't lost on me as I unlocked the screen. What I found was nothing outright incriminating, but it was enough to make my stomach churn. A series of messages between Ryan and someone named S. Short, vague exchanges that didn't reveal much but hinted at something more. Can't wait to see you. I'll make it work. She doesn't suspect anything. The last message made my blood run cold. She doesn't suspect anything. Was I she? And if so, what was there to suspect? I felt a wave of nausea as I locked the phone and placed it back where I'd found it. My hands were trembling, my thoughts spiraling as I tried to make sense of what I had just seen. When Ryan emerged from the bathroom, towel drying his hair, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. You okay? He asked, noticing the look on my face. Yeah, I said quickly, forcing myself to sound normal. Just tired. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with possibilities. Was I overreacting? Jumping to conclusions? Or was there something deeper going on, something I wasn't ready to face? The receipt and the messages became a knot in my chest, tightening with each passing day. I wanted to confront Ryan, to demand answers, but a part of me was terrified of what I might uncover. What if my suspicions were right? What if the life I thought was perfect was built on a foundation of lies? For the first time in our marriage, I felt truly alone. The man I had trusted with my heart, my future, and my dreams suddenly felt like a stranger. And as much as I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, the doubts were impossible to ignore. I resolved to dig deeper to find out the truth for myself. But as I began my search for answers, I couldn't have imagined just how far-reaching, or devastating, the truth would be. The days that followed were a haze of confusion and dread. The receipt and the cryptic messages weighed heavily on my mind, growing louder in my thoughts no matter how much I tried to ignore them. Ryan carried on as if nothing was wrong, his charm and affection undiminished. But to me, every word, every gesture felt like it could be hiding something deeper. I started to see things I hadn't noticed before. His late nights at work, which I had always attributed to his ambition, now seemed suspicious. The unexplained phone calls, the sudden need to step outside when his phone rang, all of it began to form a picture I didn't want to believe. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in our bedroom, I noticed Ryan's briefcase sitting slightly ajar. It wasn't unusual, he often left it there after work. But today, something about it caught my attention. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside, I found the usual papers, notebooks, and pens. But tucked into a side pocket was a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat as I reached for it, my hands trembling. When I opened it, I found a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant encrusted with tiny diamonds. It was beautiful, too beautiful to be a random purchase. But it wasn't for me. I knew that without a doubt. Ryan had already given me a gift for our anniversary, a thoughtful if modest bracelet. This necklace was different, extravagant in a way that didn't match his usual taste. I closed the box and placed it back in the briefcase, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and fear. Who was it for? And why hadn't he told me about it? That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I found myself watching him closely, searching for cracks in his facade. He was as attentive as ever, asking about my day and sharing stories from work. But now, every word felt rehearsed, every smile forced. Is everything okay at work? I asked casually, testing the waters. He glanced at me, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. Yeah, just busy as usual. Why? No reason, I said quickly, forcing a smile. You just seem distracted lately. I'm fine, he said, his tone reassuring. You don't need to worry about me. But I did worry. His response, though calm, only fueled my suspicions. That night, as he slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing with possibilities. Was he seeing someone else? Was the necklace meant for her? The thought made my stomach churn. But as much as I wanted answers, I was afraid to confront him directly. What if I was wrong? What if my suspicions destroyed something that wasn't broken? In the days that followed, I began to notice more inconsistencies. Ryan's stories about work didn't quite add up, and his schedule seemed to shift unpredictably. Once, when I called his office to ask a quick question, his assistant mentioned he had left early for a meeting. But when I asked Ryan about it later, he said he had been in the office all day. The lie, though small, felt monumental. If he could lie about something so trivial, what else was he hiding? One evening, as I cleaned the kitchen, I overheard Ryan speaking on the phone in the next room. His voice was low, almost a whisper, and I could only catch snippets of the conversation. "I told you I'll handle it. No, she doesn't know. Just give me more time." My heart pounded as I strained to hear more, but he ended the call abruptly, the sound of his footsteps approaching. I quickly busied myself with the dishes, pretending I hadn't heard anything. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Just work," he said, his expression unreadable. Nothing important. But it was important, at least to me. And as much as I wanted to believe him, my instincts told me otherwise. I started piecing together everything I had discovered. The receipt, the necklace, the vague messages, the phone calls. Alone, each piece seemed innocuous enough. But together they painted a picture I couldn't ignore. A picture of a man hiding something. I decided it was time to take action. I couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. If Ryan wasn't going to tell me the truth, I would have to find it myself. That night, as he slept, I opened his phone again, scrolling through his messages and emails. Most of it was mundane. Work updates, reminders, and the occasional exchange with friends. But buried among the threads was another conversation with S. Tomorrow at 7. Same place. It was short and vague, but it was enough. Whoever S was, they were meeting tomorrow. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I stared at the message. I had a choice to make: confront Ryan outright or follow him and see for myself. The thought of confrontation terrified me. What if he lied? What if he convinced me I was imagining things? No, I needed proof. And so, the next evening, I found myself sitting in my car a block away from Ryan's office, waiting for him to leave. My heart raced as I watched him exit the building and head toward his car. I followed at a safe distance, my palms sweaty against the steering wheel. When he pulled into the parking lot of a quiet cafe, I parked a few spaces away, watching as he entered the building. A few minutes later, a woman joined him at the table, a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, with dark hair and an air of confidence that made my stomach churn. They spoke animatedly, their conversation impossible to hear from where I sat. But their body language told me everything I needed to know. My world began to unravel. Sitting in my car outside the cafe, I felt a storm of emotions brewing inside me. Shock, anger, sadness, and disbelief. The woman Ryan was meeting with was a stranger to me, yet her presence felt like an intrusion into my life, an unraveling of everything I thought I knew. They sat close, their conversation animated but intimate. Occasionally she would touch his hand and he wouldn't pull away. My heart ached with every passing second. I couldn't just sit there and watch. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I stepped out of the car and walked into the cafe. The sound of the bell above the door made Ryan glance up, and when his eyes met mine, the color drained from his face. "Emma?" he stammered, standing up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The woman turned to look at me, her expression a mixture of surprise and guilt. I folded my arms, my voice steady despite the whirlwind inside me. "Who is she, Ryan?" The woman looked between us, clearly flustered. I should go," she said, grabbing her purse and standing. "No," I said firmly, stopping her in her tracks. "I think you should stay. I'd love to know what's going on." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of panic and frustration. "Emma, please, let's talk about this somewhere else." "Why? So you can come up with another lie?" I snapped, my voice rising. "I've had enough of your lies, Ryan. Who is she and what's going on?" The woman hesitated before speaking. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I work with Ryan." "Work with him?" I repeated, my tone laced with disbelief. "This doesn't look like a work meeting." Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Emma, it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," I said, my voice shaking. "Explain why you've been sneaking around, lying to me, and meeting with her behind my back." "I deserve the truth, Ryan." For a moment he said nothing, his blue eyes searching mine as if looking for a way out. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Let's talk outside, he said. I followed him out of the cafe, my heart pounding in my chest. The cool evening air did little to calm the fire raging inside me. I'm listening, I said, crossing my arms. Ryan looked at the ground, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, she's someone I've been working with on something important. Something personal. Personal? I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Like a new necklace? Or maybe a vacation I didn't know about. His head shot up, his eyes wide with realization. You went through my things? You left me no choice, Ryan, I said, my voice breaking. Do you have any idea what it's been like for me? Finding receipts, seeing messages, watching you act like a stranger in our own home? I thought I was losing my mind. He took a step closer, his expression softening. Emma, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I repeated, my voice rising. From what? The truth? Because all you've done is hurt me. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. There's something I've been keeping from you, something I didn't know how to tell you. Sir, she's helping me with it. I stared at him, waiting for an explanation that never came. You're not making any sense, Ryan, I said, shaking my head. What could possibly justify this? Before he could answer, Sarah stepped out of the cafe, her expression uneasy. Ryan, she said hesitantly, I think it's time you told her everything. Everything about what? I demanded, turning to her. Ryan looked at me, his face pale. It's not what you think, Emma. It's not an affair. Then what is it? I asked, my voice cracking. What could possibly explain all of this? The lies, the secrecy, the sleepless nights wondering what I did wrong? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Finally, he said, it's about your health. I froze, the weight of his words sinking in. My health. Ryan nodded, his expression filled with guilt. I didn't want to scare you, Emma. But I found out something during one of your checkups last year. I wanted to be sure before I said anything, so I started working with Sarah to figure out how to help you. I stared at him, my mind reeling. What are you talking about? What did you find out? I don't have all the answers yet, he admitted, his voice trembling. That's why I've been meeting with Sarah. She's a specialist. But I didn't know how to tell you without worrying you. My world shifted as I tried to process his words. Was he lying again, or was this the truth? And if it was true, why hadn't he trusted me enough to let me in? I don't know what to believe anymore, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Ryan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Emma, please, he said, his voice desperate. I never wanted to hurt you. Everything I've done was for you. I stepped back, shaking my head. If you really cared about me, Ryan, you would have trusted me. You would have told me the truth from the start. As I turned and walked away, tears streaming down my face, I realized that no matter his intentions, Ryan's lies had broken something between us. Something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. The days following that confrontation were some of the hardest I'd ever experienced. My emotions were a tangled mess of anger, confusion, and a small sliver of hope that Ryan's words about my health had been a misunderstanding, or worse, another lie. Despite everything, a part of me wanted to believe him, but I couldn't ignore the betrayal of his secrecy. I avoided Ryan as much as I could. We lived in the same house, but it felt like we were strangers passing by, barely speaking. When he did try to talk to me, I couldn't bring myself to listen. The memory of his confession, his lies cloaked as protection, was too fresh, too raw. But my curiosity and fear got the better of me. Late one night, when Ryan was fast asleep, I opened his laptop, desperate to find the truth. My hands trembled as I searched through his files, and when I found a folder labeled Sarah's Notes, my stomach churned. Inside were documents and medical reports. My medical reports. The words blurred together as I skimmed through them, but a single phrase stood out like a neon sign. Potential early-stage neurological condition. Recommend further testing. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. A flood of questions rushed through my mind. When had this happened? Why hadn't I been told? Why had Ryan decided to keep this from me? Before I could process what I was reading, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around to see Ryan standing in the doorway, his face pale. Emma, he said, his voice filled with guilt. You weren't supposed to see that. I stood, holding the laptop as though it were a weapon. When were you going to tell me, Ryan? I demanded, my voice trembling. Were you just going to keep this a secret forever? I was waiting for the right time, he said, stepping closer. I didn't want to scare you until I was sure. Sure of what? I snapped. That I'm sick? That my life might be falling apart without me even knowing it. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes pleading. I didn't want you to worry, Emma. I thought I could figure it out, find the best doctors, and then tell you when I had a solution. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. You had no right to make that decision for me. This is my life, Ryan. My body. How could you hide this from me? I was trying to protect you, he insisted. Protect me? I repeated, my voice rising. You've been lying to me for months, meeting with her, keeping secrets, and now you want to act like it was for my benefit? Do you have any idea how betrayed I feel? Ryan stepped closer, his hands outstretched as if to calm me. Emma, please, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you. His words hung in the air, heavy with regret. For a moment I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe him, to accept that his intentions had been pure. But the damage had been done, and I wasn't sure I could forgive him for the choices he had made without me. I need time, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan nodded, his shoulders slumping. Take all the time you need, he said. But please, Emma, don't shut me out completely. I love you. I've always loved you. His words stung, a painful reminder of the man I had once trusted completely. Without another word, I walked past him, clutching the laptop as if it could somehow shield me from the truth. The next morning I made an appointment with my doctor. If there was something wrong with me, I needed to hear it from a professional, not through Ryan's secrecy or Sarah's notes. Sitting in the sterile office, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The doctor reviewed my records and explained the situation calmly and clearly. There were early signs of a possible condition, but nothing definitive. Further tests would be needed to confirm anything, and even then the prognosis wasn't certain. I left the office feeling both relieved and overwhelmed. The problem wasn't as dire as I had feared, but it was still a possibility, a shadow hanging over my future. When I returned home, Ryan was waiting for me, his expression filled with worry. How did it go? He asked, his voice hesitant. I'll be fine, I said, my tone cold. For now. He nodded, relief washing over his face. Emma, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to go through this alone. I thought I was helping. You weren't, I interrupted, my voice firm. You betrayed my trust, Ryan. You made decisions for me that weren't yours to make. I don't know if I can forgive that. He looked at me, his blue eyes filled with regret. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, he said softly. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My emotions were too raw, my thoughts too tangled. All I knew was that my world had been turned upside down and it would take time to figure out how to move forward. If I even could. In the weeks that followed, the distance between Ryan and me grew unbearable. The house we had once filled with laughter and love now felt like a battlefield, every room echoing with unspoken words and lingering tension. I couldn't look at him without feeling the weight of his betrayal pressing down on my chest. Ryan tried to bridge the gap, but his efforts only served to deepen my resentment. He would leave notes on the kitchen counter, text me throughout the day, and offer to accompany me to my follow-up doctor appointments. But I couldn't forget how he had robbed me of my agency, how he had made decisions about my life without my consent. One evening, after another failed attempt at small talk over dinner, I finally broke the silence. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me, Ryan? I asked, my voice trembling. He looked up from his plate, his blue eyes filled with guilt. Emma, I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to protect you. Stop saying that. I snapped, slamming my fork down on the table. Do you have any idea what it feels like to know the person you trusted most has been lying to you? Do you know how humiliating it was to find out from Sarah instead of you? Ryan flinched, but he didn't look away. I know I handled it wrong, he said quietly. But everything I did was out of love. Love doesn't look like this, I said, tears streaming down my face. Love is about trust, Ryan. It's about making decisions together, not keeping secrets and assuming you know what's best for the other person. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Emma, I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I shook my head, standing up from the table. You can't fix this, Ryan. You broke something I don't know how to repair. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. As I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I wondered if this was the beginning of the end. The man I had loved and trusted for so many years now felt like a stranger, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. The following days were a blur of tension and avoidance. I threw myself into work and spent as much time out of the house as possible. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed to be walking on eggshells, giving me space while still trying to show he cared. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a photo that made my stomach drop. It was a picture of Sarah at a work event, standing next to Ryan. The caption read, "Couldn't have pulled this off without my amazing partner." Partner. The word echoed in my mind, stoking the embers of doubt that refused to die. I told myself it was just a professional relationship, that I had no reason to mistrust Ryan any more than I already did. But the image of them standing side by side, her confident smile, his familiar charm, made it impossible to ignore the nagging voice in my head. I decided to confront him once and for all. That night, I waited for Ryan to come home, rehearsing what I would say. When he walked through the door, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but I didn't care. I needed answers. "Ryan," I said, my tone firm. "We need to talk." He set down his briefcase, his posture tense. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath, holding up my phone to show him the photo. "What is this?" He frowned, taking a step closer. "It's just a work event, Emma. You know that." "Do I?" I asked, my voice rising. "Because all I see is you and Sarah acting like you're the perfect team while I'm sitting at home, wondering if I can even trust you anymore." "Emma, that's not fair," he said, his voice filled with frustration. "I've told you everything. I've been transparent." "Transparent?" I interrupted, laughing bitterly. "You've been anything but transparent, Ryan. You lied to me for months. You kept me in the dark about my own health. And now you expect me to believe that nothing else is going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I can't change the past, Emma," he said. "But I swear to you there's nothing between me and Sarah. She's just helping me navigate this mess I created." I stared at him, searching his eyes for the truth. For a moment I wanted to believe him, to let go of the anger and pain that had consumed me. But the wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said, my voice breaking. Ryan took a step closer, his blue eyes pleading. "Emma, please. Don't give up on us. We've been through so much together. We can get through this too." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "You don't get it, Ryan. You broke something that might never heal. And I don't know if I have the strength to keep trying." As I walked away, his voice followed me, soft and filled with desperation. "I love you, Emma. I always have. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore." After that conversation with Ryan, I knew I needed space. Space to think, to breathe, and to figure out what I truly wanted. I couldn't keep living in a state of constant doubt and emotional turmoil. For too long, I had focused on preserving the image of a perfect marriage, even as cracks began to show. It was time to focus on myself. The next morning, I packed a small bag and left the house, telling Ryan I needed time to clear my head. He didn't try to stop me, but the look of pain in his eyes as I walked out the door lingered with me. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I drove aimlessly for hours, finally ending up at a quiet inn on the outskirts of a small town. The place was quaint and peaceful, surrounded by rolling hills and trees that glowed golden in the late afternoon sun. It was exactly what I needed, a retreat from the noise and chaos of my life. The first few days were difficult. I felt untethered, like a ship adrift with no anchor. Without the routine of my marriage, I wasn't sure who I was or what to do with myself. I spent hours sitting by the window of my room, staring out at the landscape and trying to make sense of my emotions. Eventually, I forced myself to take small steps toward healing. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto the page without filter or judgment. Writing became a form of therapy, helping me process the pain of Ryan's betrayal and the doubts I had about my own choices. In my journal, I began to ask myself hard questions. When had I stopped prioritizing my own needs? Why had I ignored the signs that something was wrong? And most importantly, what did I truly want for my future? One afternoon, as I sat on a bench overlooking a tranquil lake near the inn, I had a realization that hit me like a bolt of lightning. I had been so focused on salvaging my relationship with Ryan that I had forgotten to nurture my relationship with myself. For years, I had defined myself as Ryan's wife, as part of a unit, without fully exploring who I was as an individual. That realization was both painful and empowering. I decided it was time to rediscover myself, to figure out who I was outside of my marriage. I signed up for a yoga class at the inn, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I went on long walks in nature, letting the fresh air and quiet soothe my soul. I even started sketching again, a hobby I had loved in college but abandoned after getting married. Each small step felt like a victory, a reclamation of the person I had been before life got so complicated. A few days into my stay at the inn, I met an older woman named Margaret who was also staying there. She was vibrant and full of life, with a warm smile and a kind, understanding demeanor. "You look like someone who has a lot on her mind," she said one evening as we shared a pot of tea in the inn's cozy common room. I smiled weakly. "You could say that." Margaret nodded, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "Sometimes life throws us curveballs that make us question everything. But those moments, as painful as they are, can also be opportunities to grow." Her words stayed with me long after our conversation ended. For the first time, I began to see my situation not as a tragedy, but as a chance to rebuild, to become stronger and more self-aware than I had ever been. By the end of my week at the inn, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in months. I wasn't fully healed, far from it, but I was starting to understand what I needed to move forward. I couldn't keep living for someone else, trying to mold myself into the person Ryan wanted me to be. I had to start living for me. When I returned home, Ryan was waiting, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "Emma," he said softly, "I've missed you." I nodded, setting down my bag. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where so many of our conversations had taken place. But this time I was in control. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, meeting his gaze. "And I've realized that I can't keep living like this, questioning everything, feeling like I don't even know myself anymore." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I need time, Ryan. Time to figure out who I am and what I want. I don't know if that means we can fix this or if it means going our separate ways. But I do know that I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for the sake of our marriage." His blue eyes filled with pain, but he nodded. "I understand," he said quietly. I hope you know how much I love you, Emma. I always have." "I know," I said, my voice soft. "But sometimes love isn't enough." Returning home marked the beginning of a new chapter for me. It wasn't easy stepping back into the life I had shared with Ryan, but this time my focus wasn't on him or our marriage. It was on myself. I had spent so many years putting his needs and our relationship first that I had forgotten how to nurture my own dreams and passions. The first step was reclaiming my space. I reorganized the house, creating a small corner in the living room for myself. A cozy nook with a desk, a chair, and a shelf filled with books and art supplies. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could write, sketch, and reflect. One day, as I sorted through old boxes in the attic, I stumbled across a sketchbook from my college days. Flipping through its pages, I was struck by how vibrant and carefree my drawings had been back then. I had loved creating art, pouring my emotions onto the page, but somewhere along the way I had let that part of me fade. That evening, I set up my sketchpad and pencils and began to draw for the first time in years. It felt awkward at first, my hand unsure and hesitant. But as the hours passed, I lost myself in the process, rediscovering the joy of creating something from nothing. As I began to reconnect with myself, I also started to explore new interests. I joined a local yoga class, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. The studio was small and welcoming, filled with people of all ages and backgrounds. The first session was challenging. I felt clumsy and out of place, but the instructor's gentle encouragement kept me going. By the end of the class, I felt a sense of calm and accomplishment I hadn't experienced in months. "You're doing great," the instructor said as I rolled up my mat. "It's not about perfection. It's about showing up for yourself." Her words resonated with me. For so long I had measured my worth by external standards, by how well I supported Ryan, by the image of our marriage, by the expectations of others. Now I was learning to show up for myself, to embrace imperfection and celebrate small victories. Around this time I reconnected with Clara, an old friend from college who had always been a source of positivity in my life. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I reached out, she welcomed me back into her life with open arms. Over coffee one afternoon, I shared my story with her. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and my journey toward healing. Clara listened without judgment, her presence warm and reassuring. "Emma," she said, placing her hand over mine. You've been through so much, but look at you now. You're rediscovering who you are, and that's something to be proud of. Her words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time, I began to see myself not as a victim of my circumstances, but as someone who was actively choosing to grow and evolve. Clara introduced me to a community of women who shared similar experiences. Divorcees, widows, and others navigating the complexities of life after loss. Their stories were raw and inspiring, filled with resilience and hope. Being part of this group gave me a sense of belonging, a reminder that I wasn't alone in my journey. One evening, as I sat in my nook sketching, I realized how much I had changed in just a few weeks. The woman who had once felt lost and broken was beginning to feel whole again. I wasn't the same person I had been before Ryan's betrayal, but I was stronger, more self-aware, and more determined to live life on my own terms. My art became an outlet for my emotions, a way to process the pain and transform it into something beautiful. I started sharing my drawings online, and to my surprise, they resonated with others. Messages began pouring in from people who found comfort and inspiration in my work. You have a gift, Clara said one day as we looked through my sketches. You should share it with the world. Her encouragement planted a seed of possibility in my mind. What if my art could be more than just a personal outlet? What if it could become a way to connect with others and make a difference? For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose. I wasn't just healing, I was thriving, uncovering hidden strengths I hadn't realized I possessed. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I was determined to make the most of it. The person I was becoming felt like a stranger and an old friend all at once. I was rediscovering pieces of myself I had forgotten, and in doing so I was building a new foundation, one that couldn't be shaken by betrayal or loss. Amid my journey of self-discovery, life threw me an unexpected curveball. One afternoon while I was sketching in the park, a man approached me. He had a kind smile, wavy dark brown hair, and warm hazel eyes. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him right away. Emma, right? He said, stopping a few feet away. I squinted at him, trying to place his face. Yes. Do I know you? He chuckled softly. It's been a while. Liam. We met a couple of years ago at one of Ryan's work events. Recognition dawned on me. Liam had been a colleague of Ryan's, someone I'd met briefly at a company party. At the time, he had struck me as polite but reserved, blending into the background while others commanded attention. Oh, right, I said, setting my pencil down. It's nice to see you again. He gestured to the bench. Do you mind if I sit? Not at all, I replied, scooting over to make room. Liam sat down, his gaze falling on my sketchbook. That's beautiful, he said, nodding toward the half-finished drawing of the park's fountain. Thank you, I said, feeling a flicker of pride. It's just a hobby. You have real talent, he said earnestly. You should consider doing something with it. I smiled, appreciating his kind words. For a few minutes we made small talk, exchanging pleasantries about the weather and the park. But then his tone shifted, becoming more serious. Emma, he said, his hazel eyes meeting mine, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I heard about what's been going on with you and Ryan. My stomach tightened. What did you hear? Just bits and pieces, he said cautiously. Ryan mentioned you two were having a rough time. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. But there was something genuine about Liam's concern, something that made me feel like I could trust him. It's been hard, I admitted, looking down at my sketchbook. A lot has happened, and I'm trying to figure out how to move forward. Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. For what it's worth, you're stronger than you realize. I can see it in the way you carry yourself, the way you're rebuilding your life. Not everyone has that kind of resilience. His words caught me off guard. I had spent so much time feeling weak and broken that I hadn't stopped to consider how far I had come. Thank you, I said softly. Over the next few weeks, Liam and I crossed paths more often. He had recently moved to the area and was spending his weekends exploring the neighborhood. We began meeting at the park regularly, our conversations becoming a source of comfort and clarity for me. Liam had a way of listening that made me feel truly heard. He never offered empty platitudes or tried to fix things for me. Instead, he encouraged me to trust my instincts and prioritize my happiness. One afternoon as we sat by the lake, I shared something I hadn't admitted to anyone else. Sometimes I feel like I failed, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Like I wasn't enough for Ryan. Liam shook his head firmly. Emma, you didn't fail. If anything, you gave more than anyone could ever expect. Relationships aren't about being enough. They're about partnership, mutual respect, and trust. Ryan made choices that broke that trust. It's not your burden to carry. His words hit me like a tidal wave, washing away some of the guilt and self-doubt I had been holding on to. You're right, I said, a small smile forming on my lips. I've spent so much time blaming myself for what went wrong, but it wasn't all on me. Exactly, Liam said, his hazel eyes warm. You deserve to be with someone who sees your worth and treats you the way you deserve to be treated. Liam's presence in my life became a turning point. He wasn't just an unexpected ally, he was a reminder of what it felt like to be seen and valued for who I was. While I wasn't ready to entertain the idea of a new relationship, Liam's friendship helped me realize that there were people in the world who could offer support without strings attached. He reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I didn't have to carry the weight of my struggles in isolation. Through my conversations with Liam, I began to rebuild my confidence and sense of self-worth. I started setting boundaries with Ryan, asserting my independence and making it clear that I needed space to heal. Ryan didn't take it well, but I no longer felt responsible for his feelings. For the first time in years, I was prioritizing myself, and it felt liberating. After months of focusing on myself, I began to notice something unexpected. Hope. It wasn't the kind of overwhelming, all-consuming hope I had felt in the early days of my marriage, but a quiet, steady feeling that maybe, just maybe, my story wasn't over. I had spent so long believing that my worth was tied to my role as Ryan's wife that I had forgotten who I was outside of that identity. But as I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, I started to see myself in a new light. I was strong, creative, resilient, and capable of building a future that didn't rely on someone else's validation. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I sat at my favorite park bench sketching, Liam joined me. It had become our unspoken tradition to meet there, and I looked forward to his company more than I cared to admit. You've been working on that one for a while, he said, nodding toward the sketchbook in my lap. I smiled, holding up the page. It was a detailed drawing of the lake surrounded by golden leaves, the sunlight glinting off the water. I want to get it just right, I said. It's beautiful, he said, his voice soft. Just like everything you create. His compliment caught me off guard and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. Over the past few months, Liam had become more than just a friend. He had become a source of encouragement and light in a time when I had needed it most. Thank you, I said, meeting his warm hazel eyes. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ducks glide across the water. Finally, Liam spoke, his tone tentative. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course, I said, closing my sketchbook. He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the lake. Do you ever think about starting over? About letting someone new into your life? His question hung in the air, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. The idea of opening my heart again felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I think about it, I admitted. But it's hard. After everything that happened with Ryan, trusting someone feels risky. I get that, Liam said, turning to face me. But I also think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. And if anyone deserves happiness, it's you. His words touched something deep inside me and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Thank you, Liam. That means more than you know. Over the next few weeks, our friendship deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. Liam wasn't just a confidant, he was someone who genuinely saw me for who I was, flaws and all. He didn't try to fix me or push me into something I wasn't ready for. He simply showed up, day after day, with kindness and patience. One evening as we walked through the park, he stopped suddenly and turned to me. Emma, he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, I don't want to overstep, but I need to tell you how I feel. I care about you, a lot. And I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know. His confession took my breath away. For so long, I had felt unworthy of love, convinced that my broken pieces were too jagged for anyone to hold. But Liam's words reminded me that love didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. I care about you too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. A smile spread across his face, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope for what could be. As our relationship blossomed, I realized that love didn't have to be a grand, sweeping gesture. It could be found in the quiet moments, in the way Liam encouraged me to chase my dreams, in the laughter we shared over coffee, in the simple comfort of his presence. But more importantly, I learned that love wasn't about losing yourself in another person. It was about growing together, supporting each other while still holding onto your individuality. Liam taught me what it meant to be truly seen and valued, and in turn I began to see and value myself in ways I never had before. One day, as we strolled through the city, hand in hand, Liam stopped in front of a small art gallery. "You should put your work in there," he said, nodding toward the window display. I laughed. "I'm not ready for that." "You are," he said firmly. "You're more ready than you think." With his encouragement, I submitted my work to the gallery, and to my surprise, they loved it. Seeing my art displayed for others to appreciate was a moment of pure joy, a reminder that I was capable of creating something meaningful, not just for myself but for others. Liam's support and love became a cornerstone of my new life. Together, we built a relationship founded on trust, respect, and genuine connection. And while the scars from my past hadn't completely faded, they no longer defined me. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Just as I began to feel truly at peace with my life, the past came knocking. Literally. It was a quiet Saturday morning, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and sketching a new piece. The sound of the doorbell startled me. When I opened the door, I found Ryan standing there, looking as though he had aged years in the months since I had last seen him. "Emma," he said softly, his blue eyes filled with a mix of regret and hope. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, to protect the peace I had worked so hard to build. But another part of me, the part that still carried the weight of our shared history, wanted to hear him out. "Fine," I said, stepping aside. "But this isn't going to change anything." He nodded, stepping into the house he had once called home. He looked around, his gaze lingering on the changes I had made, the new art on the walls, the fresh flowers on the table, the cozy nook that had become my sanctuary. "This place looks different," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "I'm different," I replied simply, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Ryan?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about everything that happened, and—" I prompted, my tone firm. "I messed up," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I betrayed your trust, I hurt you, and I made choices that pushed you away. I see that now, and I hate myself for it." I looked at him, searching his face for sincerity. "Why are you here, Ryan? What do you expect me to do with this?" "I don't expect anything," he said quickly. I wanted to apologize. To tell you how sorry I am for everything. You didn't deserve what I put you through, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." His words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had spent so much time grieving the end of our marriage, replaying the moments that had led to its collapse. And now here he was asking for forgiveness. "I appreciate your apology," I said finally, my voice steady. "But it doesn't change what happened. You broke something between us, Ryan, something I can't get back." He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know. I hope there might still be a chance for us." My chest tightened. "Ryan, I've moved on. I've spent months rebuilding my life, learning how to be happy again. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like myself. I can't go back to the person I was when I was with you." "I still love you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a wave, but instead of pulling me under, they rolled off me. "I don't doubt that," I said gently. "But love isn't enough. It wasn't enough then, and it's not enough now." He looked at me, his blue eyes filled with pain. "Is there really no hope for us?" I shook my head, my heart heavy but resolute. "No, Ryan. I've found someone who sees me for who I am, who values me and supports me in ways I didn't even know I needed. And more importantly, I found myself. I'm not going to give that up." Ryan left that day, and while it was difficult to watch him walk away, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. His apology, though overdue, allowed me to let go of the lingering resentment and anger I had carried. I didn't forgive him for his sake. I forgave him for mine. Holding on to the pain of his betrayal had weighed me down for too long, and it was time to release it. Liam, as always, was there to support me. When I told him about Ryan's visit, he listened without judgment, his hazel eyes filled with understanding. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Lighter," I said after a moment of reflection. "Like I can finally move on without any loose ends." He smiled, reaching for my hand. "You've come so far, Emma. I'm proud of you." The experience reaffirmed what I already knew. My past didn't define me. It had shaped me, yes, but it didn't hold the power to dictate my future. Ryan's return had been a test, a final challenge to see if I could stand firm in the new life I had built. And I had passed. The morning sun streamed through the windows, filling my home with warmth and light. It was a stark contrast to the heavy shadows that had lingered there not so long ago. As I stood in my little nook, gazing at the sketches I had been working on for my upcoming gallery exhibit, I felt a profound sense of peace. This was my life now, a life I had rebuilt from the ground up, filled with purpose, passion, and people who truly valued me. The woman I saw in the mirror was no longer the same person who had been consumed by heartbreak and doubt. I was stronger, more confident, and fully in control of my destiny. Liam entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee. His hazel eyes sparkled as he handed me a mug. "Nervous about the exhibit?" he asked with a teasing smile. "A little," I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "But mostly excited." "You're going to be amazing," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "You've worked so hard for this." His unwavering support had been a cornerstone of my journey. Liam wasn't just a partner. He was a reminder that love could be gentle, uplifting, and empowering. That evening, the gallery buzzed with energy as people admired the artwork on display. My pieces were scattered throughout the room, each one a testament to the emotional journey I had undergone. As I walked through the crowd, I overheard snippets of conversations, people discussing the depth of emotion in my work, the stories they saw in every stroke of the pencil. It was surreal standing in a room filled with strangers who connected with something so deeply personal. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not as someone's wife or someone's ex, but as myself. Liam stayed by my side, his presence a steady anchor as I navigated the whirlwind of compliments and questions. At one point, Clara appeared, her face glowing with pride. "You did it, Emma," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I always knew you had it in you." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. As the evening wound down, I stepped outside to take a breath. The cool night air was refreshing, and I found myself gazing at the city lights, reflecting on how far I had come. Ryan's betrayal had been devastating, a blow I hadn't thought I could recover from. But in the end, it had forced me to confront truths about myself and my life that I had been avoiding. It had pushed me to rediscover my passions, to rebuild my confidence, and to find a love that truly honored who I was. Liam joined me outside, slipping his hand into mine. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked. I smiled, leaning into him. "Just thinking about how much has changed." "How much I've changed?" He nodded, his hazel eyes warm. "You've come so far, Emma. And this is just the beginning." He was right. My journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. But this time I wasn't afraid. I had faced heartbreak and come out stronger, more resilient, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. As I stood there, surrounded by the glow of the city and the warmth of Liam's presence, I realized something important. I wasn't defined by the pain of my past. I was defined by the strength it had taken to overcome it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole, happy, and ready to live a life that was truly my own.